Today I want to talk to you about teamwork law number 3. It's the law of the niche. C-H-E. The law of the niche says each player has a place where they add the most value. Isn't that true? Let me tell you how I learned the law of the niche. Now, I'm not going to tell you every law and where I learned it. We don't need to do all that. But the reason the law of the niche is such an important teamwork law to me is this is a law that I didn't learn in my early years. You see, again, my background has been in the church. I was a pastor for 25 years. So, after I graduated from college with a theology degree, I went to my first church and had great expectations about pastoring this church and leading it and growing it and the whole deal. Okay, you can just see. I mean, I just graduated from college. 2 weeks later, got married. 2 weeks later, I'm at my first assignment. Okay, got the picture. Don't you just feel sorry for the people? Don't you just want to say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." But here I am in my first assignment, extremely excited. Now, I did well in college. I was always on the dean's list. In fact, I graduated second in my class. So academics were not a problem. But what I didn't realize when I went to my first church is they didn't train me in the things that I needed to be trained in. Sound familiar? Why would they want to, in college, teach me something that was helpful, practical, and life-changing? I'm kidding. There are many wonderful schools and institutions that do a great job, but I was not trained for my gifts. I was not trained for my strengths. I was not trained for my niche. In fact, the two things that I was trained best in was what I was worst in. I was trained in counseling, and I was trained to administrate. Now, anybody that knows me well just wants to burst out laughing. Because anybody that knows me well knows that I'm not good at counseling, and I'm not good at administration. You know, if you administrate, you ought to do details, and I'm not good at details. I forget things like my name. In fact, the other day, now that my wife Margaret and I are in our 50s, she's in her young 50s. And my buddy down here says, cover. It's too late. We were going somewhere the other day, and Margaret and I are forgetting things all the time. So she said, "John, you know what? We need to do teamwork. We need to partner." And I said, "Well, what are we going to do?" And she said, "I tell you what. You remember who you are, and I'll remember where we're going." Now that's how you do teamwork, and it's really helping. It really we miss it sometimes, but we're doing a lot better. Okay. So here I go. I go to my first church, my first assignment, and I know how to. I've been trained in counseling. I've been trained in administration. So what do? I do what I've been trained in. I do counseling. Now, do you understand that if you do something that you're weak in, do you realize it takes energy from you? If you do something and after you're done, you're emotionally drained, it's because you probably aren't doing something that you're good at. So I spend all day counseling those who would come to a 22-year-old, you know what I mean. So I spend all day counseling teenagers. Anyway, I spend all day counseling, or I spend all day administrating. Now, I'm not good at counseling. I'm not good at administrating. Now, if I'm not good at counseling, I'm not good at administration, the church probably is not going to do real well. Now I'm frustrated. Why am I frustrated? Because I'm saying I'm working hard. I'm diligent. I'm faithful. I have a good motives, but things aren't working well. Well, it's very simple. I'm not in my niche. I'm not doing what I do well. Now, that's been years ago. It took me about 3 years to work through the process that I shouldn't be doing what I don't do well. Let me tell you this. We all have weaknesses. How many of you have at least weakness? One weakness. One weakness. Okay. How many of you are sitting beside a person who would say they have more than one weakness? We all have weaknesses. I have them, you do. Okay. Let me tell you this. When it comes to teamwork, when it comes to your own personal success, you are not going to succeed if you just work on your weaknesses. In other words, if I'm from a 1 to a 10, I'm a 3 at counseling, and I work real hard, the good news is maybe I can get up to a 5. But I'll never get to a 10 because I'm weak in that area. Are you with me? So the problem is, so many times we spend too much time on our weaknesses, not enough time on our strengths. That's another day, another topic. But what I want you to know in finding the niche is it took me about 3 years to understand this law. And I began to ask myself, why don't I like pastoring? Why, I like people. I want to help people. Why don't I like this? Well, what I didn't like is I didn't like counseling. I didn't like administration. And it was a wonderful day when I realized I shouldn't counsel. In fact, I remember the day I received total freedom from it, and I stood up in the pulpit and I said, I'm not a good counselor. Now, first of all, that wasn't a revelation to the people. They're looking at each other and saying, thank God he figured that one out. In fact, I said, I'm such a poor counselor, if I need counseling, I wouldn't go to myself. And it was a wonderful day when I looked at my congregation and said, I'm not a good administrator. I'm not good at details. This is not where my strength is. You see, the law of the niche says that if you and I are going to be successful, we have to find our area of strength. And in your notes, the sign of a successful person is that person has found the right place for themselves. You see, you become successful when you find the right place for yourself. The sign of a successful leader is a person that these are people that have found the right place for others. And when you find the right place for others, when you can match their strengths with a part of your job and your business, you'll become successful. One of my favorite people, a wonderful friend, wonderful author, I love reading everything he does, is Chuck Swindoll. And I have in your notes, from Growing Strong in the Seasons of Life, a classic example of what I'm talking about. Once upon a time, the animals decided that they should do something meaningful to meet the problems of the new world, so they organized a school. They adopted an activity curriculum of running, climbing, swimming, and flying, and to make it easier to administer, all the animals took all the subjects. The duck was excellent in swimming. In fact, he was better than his instructor was. However, he made only passing grades in flying and was very poor in running. Since he was so slow in running, he had to drop swimming and stay after school to practice running. This caused his web feet to be badly worn, so he became only average in swimming, but average was quite acceptable, therefore nobody worried about it except the duck. The rabbit started at the top of his class in running, but developed a nervous twitch in his leg muscles because he had so much makeup work to do in swimming. And the squirrel was excellent in climbing, but he encountered constant frustration in flying class because his teacher made him start from the ground up instead of the treetop down. He developed Charlie horses from overextension, so he only got a C in climbing and a D in running. The eagle was a problem child, was severely disciplined for being a nonconformist. In climbing classes, he beat all the others to the top, but insisted on using his own way of getting there. What's the moral of this story? What Chuck is really trying to say is this: everybody is a 10 somewhere. And the job of the leader, as he or she brings the team together, is to find out where your people are a 10 and put them in the area of their strength, not their weakness. Classic example. When I played basketball in high school, we had a wonderful coach who was very wise. And the first day of basketball practice, Coach Neff would bring us together, and he would say, now, many of you probably would like to play a position that you're not fitted for. So he said, what we're going to do the very first day is I'm going to put you in a position that you're not gifted in and let you see what happens when you play it. I can remember one year, especially because in physical education, I had played on an intramural team, and I got to play center, and I thought I was a good center. Now, there's a problem. A 6-foot center is not a good center. And I remember telling the coach, I'd like to play center. Now, so instead of playing the guard position that I normally would play on the team, I remember him putting me at the center position against a guy by the name of Doug, who was 6'7". Needless to say, I continually ate the basketball. Why? I was out of position. I can't play center. Now see, what a leader does is a leader wisely understands that what he or she must do is must put the people in the right position. Because when you're out of position, you'll never be successful. As a pastor, one of my desires was for everybody in the congregation to do the same thing. I thought everybody ought to do the same thing. It shows unity. I know you're sitting there right now and saying, what a stupid man. And then you're saying, why am I taking notes from him? Because I thought everybody ought to be in the same position, ought to kind of play the same position, and kind of ought to do the same thing. And obviously, after a few years, I found that doesn't work. Why? It's very simple. Very simple. The law of the niche says that every person has a place where they bring the most value. And what a leader does is a leader understands that. And that's why I love this teamwork thought that says, you are most valuable where you add the most value. So, what do I do as a leader? As a leader, again, I walk among the team. And as I walk among the team, I begin to relate to them, I begin to connect with them, and I'm always asking myself the question, what is their strength? What's your name?
Doug.
Doug, okay. What's your name?
Richard.
Richard. What's your name?
David.
David.
Yule.
Yule. Now, so as a leader, I'm saying, okay, what is Yule's strength? What's Doug's strength? What's Richard's strength? Now, here's what I do. Here's what I do. A leader of a team is like a quarterback. The quarterback doesn't run the ball every time. In fact, the quarterback seldom calls his own signal. When we get in the huddle, I assess where we are on the field, how much distance we have to go, and then I look at my team and I say, which one of these players has the best opportunity to advance the ball for a first down or for hopefully even maybe sometime a touchdown? And if I come to the conclusion that it's Yule that has the best opportunity to get us where we need to go, then I call his number and I hand the ball off to Yule. The rest of us, we block, we do everything we can to help Yule be successful. If I think it's Doug, I hand the ball off to Doug. Very simply, what I need to do is I need to know the niche of all my players. Now, I've got a question to ask you. In fact, I have a couple questions. Question number one, if you're a team leader, the question I have to ask you is, do you know the strengths of all your people? Do you know their niche? Do you know where they are a 10? Because the success of your team will be based upon your ability to put the 10s in the right place. But I have another question. This is for the teammates, the team players. The question is, as you play on the team, do you know the strength of the person beside you? Do you know what they do well? Because what I have found is that if you know the strength of the person beside you, if you know what they do well, you begin to develop an appreciation for that teammate and for that team player. Does that make sense? So here's the way it works. The leader must know where a player adds the most value. And the reason that's important is for decision making. Until, as a leader, I know the place where a person adds the most value, I won't be able to make good decisions on where to put them. The player must know where he or she adds the most value because it will help them in understanding. And then the teammates, they must know where the other players add the most value because it adds to the appreciation of the moment. And I want to make one more thought because this is so important when it comes to learning this law, because the law of the niche is a very vital law. We've already studied law number 2 of teamwork, which is the law of the big picture. The big picture gives you vision, but the law of the niche gives you value. So when you're getting the best out of your team, they derive their value from knowing what their strength is, by knowing their niche. Does that make sense? Several years ago, I read a book called Personality Plus by Florence Littauer. It's a book on the temperaments. It's a book on melancholies and sanguines and cholerics and phlegmatics. And basically it's a very good, well-written book, humorous book, which basically helps you see every personality and every temperament as it is. It was revealing. It was helpful to me. You know why? Because up to that point, me being a choleric, kind of a bossy leader type, I kind of thought everybody ought to be like me. And if they weren't like me, I kind of always said, what's wrong with them? But I can still remember in Southern California on the beach right by the Hotel Del in Coronado, Margaret and I laying on the sand, and she read that book to me one day, Personality Plus. And all of a sudden I realized that people are not right and wrong many times, they're just different. And you become a successful team and you become a successful leader when you value those differences, when you appreciate those differences, when you complement those differences. And that's what the law of the niche is. The law of the niche question is, what do I do best? What do I do better than anyone else on the team? Because whatever it is, that's what I ought to be doing.